What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Channel 99. We've got Amanda here. Amanda Carroll. She's a friend through film. She's got a lot of interesting stories. We talk everything from bad... What is it again? I watched this show, Breaking Bad.
Yeah, like...
She did some cool shit with Breaking Bad. Yeah, she did some contractual film work for him, which was a lot of interesting information. We talked a little bit about interdimensional stuff. We talked about the Air Force. You were a pilot.
Yes.
Which is fucking awesome for some special operations stuff. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But outside of like aliens and seeing weird shit, flying, shooting stars that just kind of don't really shoot so hard. But make sure you subscribe, give us 5 stars, pass the episode along, and have a wonderful rest of your day. You're so cute.
Shut up and sit down.
And we're recording. Amanda, welcome to the show, Channel 99 Party Cast with Amanda Carroll.
Yes.
Finally got you in the studio on the show. We've got so much to talk about. We've literally talked about most of it beforehand, but we will definitely let the listeners hear your awesome story, because you've done everything. You've military, film, which is where I met you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and before that, I think you were in Arizona before you came up to Idaho. Am I right?
I was actually in New Mexico.
New Mexico?
Yes.
Do people confuse those two? Because I confuse them all the time. It's just it's the Southwest.
It's funny, like geography in general and in America, because like, if you're from up here, like New Mexico is Arizona, is like Texas is whatever. Like it's just not part of Idaho or the Northwest.
It's kind of like how people confuse Idaho with Iowa.
Right?
Yeah.
And all we think about Idaho, down south in New Mexico is, that's potato country. So
do they really think everybody up here is a bunch of farmers? And
without a doubt.
We're just a bunch of rednecks with guns.
So you mentioned I was in the military, and I'll tell you a quick story about being in the military. So
yeah.
My first duty station, after I went through a year and a half worth of training, I went down to Florida. And people would be like, "Oh my God, you have a funny accent."
They thought you had an accent.
And I'm like, "I don't have an accent. I'm from Colorado." And, and people are like, "Do y'all have roads?" I'm like, "Are you serious?" Like, no, we ride horses. I mean, come on.
I was in New York for a student council conference from when I was in high school. My high school sent the executive officers, basically, the few of us, over to a place in Albany. It was like a private women's college that held some type of a leadership conference. But the whole time I was there, I remember telling people, "Yeah, we drive tractors on the highway." I told them that we all had harvest season, which is true in certain areas, but not in Boise. They didn't know that, but I was like, "Yeah, we have harvest. We get off school for like a month. Obviously, it's not that long, but I would tell them like, yeah, we get off school for like a month for harvest, and like we have potato Olympics, and like I would just go completely like I would just basically make up a bunch of bullshit, and they didn't know, they didn't care. And back then, this was 2001, so maybe 2002. So Google was kind of just starting to get off the ground. Like people didn't think, I'm gonna Google Idaho and see if this dude is lying to me. So you could literally say whatever you want, people believed you. It was funny because at the end we had a talent show, and everybody from Idaho, my team, we did you remember that song by Ludacris, use a hoe, ho, who's a hoe, you know that use a hoe, right?
Yeah.
Well, we did potatoes.
Oh my God.
We did like an Idaho potato skit, and it was like, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but basically it was like, I don't remember it off the top of my head, so I'll have to think about that. If I remember it, I'll sing it for you later. But basically it was about us. We rewrote that song as like farmers from Idaho picking potatoes and using a hoe for our potatoes. So yeah, people enjoyed that. We won the top prize. But yeah, so military, you were a flyer. You were a pilot, right?
Yes, I was a military aviator.
And that's what they call them, aviators. And
Yeah.
is that Air Force?
I was in the Air Force.
Okay, cool.
Which is kind of the military light.
Yeah.
But as far as like the Air Force went, I worked in special operations most of my career. So I flew for FSOC, C-130s, and it was an interesting world. It really was.
Did you drop bombs, all kinds of stuff? What did you do?
We dropped something far more lethal. We dropped SEALs and other operators. So we would go in places where nobody else could go, or nobody else was stupid enough to go, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we would just do stuff that nobody talked about on CNN. So I say I was in special operations, but the truth is, like, the special operations community are these highly trained people, and then there's people around them that support them.
And you were on a support team.
Yeah. So
You were telling me that you would you'd fly these giant bombers through these canyons. Am I correct? And I was like, how do these people not hear you? And you say it's because they hear you from behind. So you're literally on top of them. They're dead before the sound wave even hits them.
well, see,
Basically, right? Am I right?
like we had no weapons, like
okay,
so
then
we
I'm
didn't
wrong.
kill anybody.
Oh no, okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
because
no-
I
no
remember you
bombs.
saying that you would land and you'd have a ton of bullets,
Yeah.
just like bullet holes through the entirety
yeah.
of your vessel. Am
Yeah.
I right? Yeah.
So
okay.
we take all kinds of bullets, but they were cargo airplanes. So at the end of the day, like we dropped, bullets and beans.
Yeah.
And so
tanks and stuff.
Oh my
Were you
God,
guys
no.
big enough? No.
No, we couldn't fit a tank in there. The best we could ever do is like a Humvee was a very tight fit.
That's still a
Yeah.
big enough like cargo.
Right. So a lot of special operations teams, like they would have like 4-wheelers or like these 4-wheeled side-by-sides.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they were fast going. We would land out in the dirt somewhere, open the rampant door, and they would just go and do what they did, and then we'd pick them up a day or two later.
So then after you drop them off, you take off again and you just kind of hover until they're ready, or do you just go back to base?
Yeah.
How does that work?
RTB, return to base.
Return to
And
base.
then the next mission would go and pick them up, or it'd be a mission later, a couple days later. So
Oh, so these people were out there for a while. It wasn't like a quick like drop, flip around, they go in, do their shit in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
20 minutes, and then out. It's like these guys are hiding out, doing recon.
yeah, a lot of our role was more like strategic infill and exfil.
Crazy.
So, like you see in the movies, the helicopters and stuff like that, like that's tactical infill and exfil. So those people actually, like, if they're trying to get out of country quick, they'll get a helicopter,
Yeah.
which can come in really close, get them, and get out.
Right.
We would have to go further out. But these are the missions where I'm just guessing that they would go in and do stuff that nobody really wanted to know about.
Yeah, or talk about, really.
Right.
Maybe everybody wants to know about it, but they just don't want to talk about
Yes.
it or hear about it. They just want to like be in the know.
Exactly. So it'd just be landing in a dirt field somewhere and letting these guys out into the countryside of Afghanistan, not really knowing what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And like, I honestly don't think I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So.
I've talked to a lot of people. Mark, he was he was like 25 or 30th years in the Marine Recon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, Mark, maybe not. Have you never worked on a project with Mark before for film?
No, I have. I know the Mark you're talking about. I can't think of
Barrier.
Yes. He
Yeah.
unfriended me on Facebook.
He did?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, he should, because we're all part of the same community. I was going
Right.
to say, like, I was thinking Mark. I was like, how many more Marks do I know in the film community? That's the only one. But you might not know more, because obviously you've got more of a history than I do. But yeah, he was telling me one time when I picked him up for a commercial shoot, because we were working on a commercial for it was like Illinois firefighter stuff, and I swung by, picked him up, and he was talking to me a little bit about his military service, and he was like, just so you know, the people who just want to talk to you about like the bad stuff that happened, chances are pretty good they either heard those stories or they got some problems, but for the most part, people who have seen that and been in, and I know I'm talking like direct combat, like people who are literally dodging bullets, and he was like, those people are either lying about another story they heard and they're just trying to glorify their situation, but most people don't really want to talk about that like offhand. He was like, I did some cool stuff, I served a long time, but he was like and when I heard him, and having been raised in like a military family, I was like, that makes sense, because my dad never talked about anything. My brother Justin really doesn't talk about anything. Not that he was, I don't think he was in direct combat when he was deployed, but it made a lot of sense. But I think it's very interesting for people, especially the listeners who are not involved in the military and don't have experience or any contact with people who have direct experience with the military. I think it's interesting to find out that there's people who do things like you. Like most people think, oh, it's Navy SEAL, but they don't think about the person who, prepares the helicopter, or
Right.
the mechanic that makes sure that everything's in line. They don't think about the person who's flying the helicopter. They just think about the guys who go in with the guns and they get shit done and they leave. But they're only there because they were flown in by somebody who was good enough to fly them into that secluded area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice for people to hear your side of the story, somebody who was able to like be a part of like super cool shit. That's cool.
It's boring. Like,
It is for you,
Oh,
but for
right.
everybody else, they're like, fuck, you gotta fly this big ass plane. Like, you were like flying this big ass plane, being shot at, you survived, like the adrenaline rush. People don't understand that. I don't even understand that. Like I've been in a cage or in a ring. I fought, like somebody's trying to knock you out, but at the end of the day, that's sanctioned. Like when you're in war, it's sanctioned per se, right? But at the end of the day, some dude catches you, he's gonna take a rusty like hatchet or whatever he has, and he's gonna cut your head off because you're the enemy. That's how I feel. So,
But see, it's funny in aviation, like, everybody in military aviation is kind of like, I guess, kind of like a scientist, an engineer, all of these things. And so we just treat it as a very professional job. So everybody in the air crew goes through a year or more, thousands of hours of training. And so for us, like, it's not scary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not scary because the confidence you have, like, in the cage, like, to me, that would be terrifying.
yeah.
But to get in an airplane and fly, it's just drilled into you,
Mhm.
And so it just
It's your
becomes
job.
second nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like when I show up to the office, I do fear if I screw up my job, but I don't think anybody's gonna die because of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Did you ever have any close encounters where you thought maybe you might be going down, or were you just because
No.
America, right? Because we have like the best aircraft.
Not even that. Like, it sounds really cool. All the stuff sounds really cool, but most of them were just super routine missions.
Yeah.
And so nothing was all that scary. Like sometimes, like the most scary things happened in America. We were coming back from an air show in Little Rock, and we had a brand new student pilot on board. And so we were flying back to New Mexico, and he needed to do some qualifications. He needed to do some touch and go, stuff like that. And so we were kind of looking.
What's that? What's touch and go?
Touch and go is where you come in on an approach, you touch the wheels down, you run down the runway, you set back up for takeoff and take back off. And so you just fly in a giant circle, touch,
Gotcha.
go, touch, go, touch, go. People in the back call them crash and dashes because they have nothing to do in this whole time except for
Wait
landing.
for somebody to crash.
Just landing 25 or 50 times. Like it's,
And people wreck though.
well,
Do people drop like too hard and break their landing gear and go bottom out? Does that happen?
it happens.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Usually by the time you hit the point where we were at, you've been flying for a long time. So as you gain experience, the hard landings kind of taper off, except when there's environmental conditions, something you don't predict to happen, that can set in a chain of events where you do have a hard landing. So I don't know. Like, I think every pilot's obsessed with touching down on the numbers as smooth as possible. So
Yeah.
we all think about these things, a descent rate, and like if I set myself up for landing at this point, am I going to be able to put the main landing gear on the numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually kind of boring. Like, we're just in our heads. Like, we all
Yeah.
just want to be the best. We all just want to do the best we can. But at the end of the day, like, everybody on the air crew has a job to do, and we have to think about each other. So nobody wants to put the crew in harm or take unnecessary risks. Because ultimately, every single person's responsible for the 5 or 7 or 10 or 100 people that are with them.
2 things, because I don't want to forget about them. 1, UFO. That's one thing. Unidentified flying objects. We're going to get to this in a second. I'll just ask you.
Well, jump out there. Because,
okay, let's talk about it. Have you seen weird shit?
Flying, yes. So at night, you see weird shit.
I believe it. Let's tell me some weird shit.
I can never say that I have seen a UFO, but
You've seen things you cannot explain.
Right? Like, I've seen shooting stars that seem to hang in the atmosphere for minutes at a time, whereas, like, you see the shooting stars and they just seem to burn out.
They disappear.
So,
Yes.
Like, if you have any understanding of science and, density of gases and thermodynamics, stuff like that, like, I guess you kind of have, like, a predisposition or a thought of what it should be. You see something falling out of the sky, and you're like,
It should keep falling.
Right?
Why
you see
did
it burning
stop?
up in the atmosphere. Like, what is that? What is re-entering that's so huge that leaves just a fire trail for that long?
And then it makes right degree angle. Like,
I've never seen that.
You've never seen weird stuff like that?
No,
But
I've
you
never
saw things
seen-
that made you question, like, whether or not it is a shooting star.
Right. It made me
Sure.
question my grasp on physics. It made me question my grasp on math and science, and, like, made me just go, God, that just doesn't seem right. Like, whatever that is.
We only know what we know, right?
Right.
And what we've been told. If I'm put in a cage and I'm told that 1 + 1 = 3 for 30 years, and then you let me out of that cage, I'm going to believe that 1 + 1 is 3.
Exactly.
And no matter how many people tell me that it's not 3, I'd be like, no, that's what I know.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
NASA's been blowing my mind recently. A few things. Now they believe that space is made up of over 90% liquid. Makes sense, because they train their astronauts in water. They yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, they came out with the theory that the moon is actually a part of our atmosphere, and it's on the exterior part of our atmosphere. So there should be some type of oxygen. There should be winds, which would make sense if you were to look back at some of the films on the moon landing. Now, that's a whole nother conspiracy theory that I could get into. I've written papers in college, multiple papers on how we faked the moon landing, and so I'm. It's not that I'm saying I believe that we faked it, but I'm saying we only know what we know, and there were some things that really drew my attention to the, to the conspiracy theory side.
Right.
Only because it tickles your brain, right? It really does. It tickles your brain, and it makes you it makes you think about contradictory arguments that that have very viable facts that could be used to to I guess argue against whether or not we did land on the moon. I don't know. I think we probably have, but when we look at countries nowadays, they still don't put men on the moon. They put a rover on the moon.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. When you've got Elon Musk, who's like, dude, $250,000, I'll put your ass on Mars in 5 years.
Right.
Okay, but Russia and the United States can't get a dude to the fucking moon in like the next 12 years. Doesn't make any sense. And then you geek out on the whole like moon base shit. You geek out on the whole Nazi stuff, multi-dimensions. There's there's so many different things. There's Nikolai Tesla had received a bunch of really weird radio signals from like Mars and stuff like that. He claimed that he had a whole plan to actually go to Mars. It's interesting that after he had died, the FBI raided the entirety of his complex and stole all the shit. We stole all the German physicists. We stole all the rocket scientists. We did it better than Russia, basically, right? Because we are the only people.
We didn't do it better than Russia because
we're the only ones that put men
Sputnik,
on the moon.
Well, Sputnik was first.
Yeah, but that's like a radio signal that's just thrown up.
Well,
in the
it doesn't
atmosphere.
matter. Like,
that's true.
Like, we took the #1 Nazi who built rockets, and we brought him over here. We treated him like shit, and we didn't build any of his designs.
True.
We didn't send up his satellite. He had a satellite ready to go before Sputnik, but NASA was like, shut up, Nazi. So the Russians got like the #5 V2 guy.
True.
And they were like, come on in, have some vodka, build some rockets. And like, they were first in space. They had the first satellite. They put the first dog in space, the first chimp in space. So like, I feel like the Russians had it much better than us. But see, it's funny because like, we are born with this disposition of like, America is like the first in everything. But if you look back through history, like,
we're not.
We're a little behind the power curve all the time.
Yeah. It's funny how the U.S. sabotaged the moon landing and the rocket stuff with Russia.
Right.
And looking back on the Cold War, that is such an interesting time because I do believe that both countries, especially since there has been no nuclear warfare since the 40s, it's always been a scare tactic and everybody has it. So why not use it if you need to? Like, let's think about it. Donald Trump, President Trump, he dropped what do they call it? The mother of all
the
warheads, Moab or whatever. Yeah. And it was like the largest bomb outside of a nuclear bomb, right? Why not drop a small nuclear bomb? I don't understand that. Like, my guess is there's an interference from something that says basically, we're going to let you know when you can go to the moon. Otherwise, why wouldn't we have put more humans on the moon? Why wouldn't we have established a base on the moon? Have you heard of the Apollo 20 mission?
No.
Oh, this might get too creepy, too geeky. Apollo 20 is a guy who claimed to have been a part of a secret mission by NASA, and he had a bunch of like a bunch of video, and he released it, put it online. Long story short, it was a recon mission to go scope out what they believed was a crashed like alien spaceship that was on the moon. And
is this the dark side of the moon theory?
It's like this is like legit. Like, it shows Russian cosmonauts in there. It shows like an Apollo 20. Everything looks really legitimate. And when you go onto Google and you look at the analysis, everybody's like, why would somebody spend this kind of time on something like this and recreate the entire cab of something that literally looks like it was created at that time? It shows a touchdown on the moon. It shows them moving up to this craft. Like, there's all this footage this guy claims to have had, and it looks pretty real. So at the end of the day, NASA can squash anything, right? They can just say, oh no, it's not real. But it's because we're going to be like, oh, NASA knows more than some random guy. and we're going to believe it because as a society, we've been told what we've been told. And
we don't question anything.
Yeah, we don't want to contradict our beliefs.
But I will put a counter argument to this.
Yes.
Like, if they faked the moon landing, why couldn't you fake that? Like,
because the government's not going to put out a multi-million dollar thing to say we went and caught an alien and then release it and make it look weird. Do you think they would do that?
I don't know. Like, the military uses this thing called tactical deception. And so that is to make your enemy think you're doing one thing, but in reality you're doing another.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't the government do that? Why wouldn't the government, like, try and discredit
itself?
Other opposing voices or itself in order to draw attention away from, their own indiscretions or whatever.
That makes sense.
Totally. I mean, what if it was faked? I mean, like, there's a possibility the moon landing could have been faked because we're so desperate to beat the Russians, like,
Well, the Russians said that they're going to put they're going to put a manned aircraft on the moon by like 2029 or 2030. Okay. That's 10 years away from now. If America could have done it in the 60s, how the fuck do you not do it as Russia now with the technology? We got to the moon on a 32 kilobyte calculator. let's be real. Our technology at the time was literally a TI-32 calculator.
Yes.
Plus, minus, you might get a square root out of that shit, but that's about it. So if we got to the moon on a TI-32 calculator, something you buy for your kid in first grade for their entire elementary, because they're not learning anything outside of those calculations, those mathematical like equations, right? If we could do it back then, how come we can't do it now? There's funding. There's private funding. Shit, look at Elon Musk. Again, that dude promises to put people on Mars. Like, he wants to start a Mars colony. That dude says there's a 70% chance that he's just going to go to Mars and never to come back. Good for him. NASA just came out saying that it's very possible there's an underwater lake system on Mars and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you go to the inner Earth theory and you go to like the hollow Earth theory, all that kind of stuff, it would only make sense that, hey, maybe aliens aren't from like somewhere else. Maybe they're extraterrestrial. Maybe we have like Atlantis and these people had some type of nuclear warfare tens of millions of years ago completely destroyed our planet. It's very possible that they were like, all right, well, we're just going to go on the inside of the Earth. I could totally geek on this. This is a whole conspiracy theory podcast. We're not going to get
I'm waiting for you to get your tinfoil hat out. Like, where is it, Tim?
So many things. You're just a rabbit hole. You're going down a rabbit hole with me. But like, but no, for me, it's very interesting about at least the world governments or the large and the superpower governments. It's interesting to me that if they believe that the moon is such a strategic place, why has it taken us so long to lay claim to the moon? I mean, they were quick to get down to Antarctica and lay claim to every little piece of Antarctica, so why not the moon? If we can go to the moon right now.
What benefit is there? Like, what is on the moon that is so interesting to go there? Like, what are we going to do?
You establish a base on the moon.
Build
you could
a moon
launch
base for what?
Rockets, intercept rockets. You could intercept things from the outer atmosphere. Like, let's say Russia were to send nuclear warheads at us. Like, that's a perfect spot to just intercept them.
Yeah,
right?
but what if the moon's on the other side of the planet?
Well, you probably set up certain things, but it is a very strategic spot. You are directly above the planet Earth at all times.
Right. I think if we're going to
never
spend
move.
all of our time and money like building a moon base, we should be working on building a space elevator first.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And NASA's been working on that forever, and it's coming up eventually.
But we don't spend the time or the money on sciences in this country like we should, like we did in the 60s. I think that this country had a lot more scientists in it in the 60s than we do now. Because,
I think so.
Yeah. I think that we don't value it as a society.
Dedicated scientists. Yeah. Makes sense.
And so we were a lot more aggressive in our pursuits of space travel and stuff like that. And so you've just seen it dwindle as people are moving away from the STEM, like academics. So, like, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense that things would slow down. Like, we should have a space elevator by now. But
right. Well, and the only reason I geek out on this stuff is because recently the Air Force has come out with the multi-million-dollar programs that they've had in investigating aerial phenomenon.
Right.
And the black budget top line topics were recently published through the Freedom of Information Act, and they have been studying multi-dimensions. You can Google, like, it's literally on the thing. It's multi-dimensions, anti-gravitational aircraft, all kinds of weird shit. This is on FBI.org for everybody who's interested. But when you look at that stuff, it's very interesting that they're slowly telling us the moon now has water. The moon now has an atmosphere. Mars now has water. It has ice caps. It's got glaciers. It now has an underwater, like an underground water system. You never know. If they could, we don't really know. All we know is there's a red spot in the sky. Nobody has the equipment, the technology to actually verify whether or not Mars has an entire, like, it is a working ecosystem with, like, maybe advanced, like, civilizations on there. We don't know. How would we know? Because to them, we look like a blue dot in the sky. They might think that we're just a giant blue dot of just some gas. They wouldn't know because nobody's been here from fucking Mars. And if they have, then they're probably going to be blown away. That it's not just a blue ball of water, and that there's no, because that's what they would see from that spot.
But see, that's how I know there's not Martians, because they would be blown away because their atmosphere is toxic and their planet generally sucks. So, like, here's my theory on aliens, right? Like we know this much about the universe, and we'll never get out of our local zone.
We're not
Right.
in our lifetime.
No, ever as humanity. Like, it's physically, as far as we can grasp physics, it's impossible to get out of our local cluster of galaxies.
You think so?
Yep. So we're stuck here as a species, and we know nothing. And so if you look at the Hubble Deep Field scans, like there's billions of galaxies just like ours out there. There's, like, mathematically, I don't think there's any chance that we're alone in this universe.
No, we're not alone.
Yeah.
I believe that there's higher intelligence from multiple planets within our own. Literally, I honestly think that,
I have no doubt.
Venus, Mars. How would we know? We don't know, right?
We don't know, but here's how we could know, right? Like, Earth is pretty amazing, and we're pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Because, like, we are generations away from developing any type of interstellar travel. And so
we think.
Well, I think so in reality.
It would really fuck with humanity if they realized that Eve is a clone of Adam used from his rib, stem cells from his rib, and an alien was like, yo, I'm going to create something for you that's going to make you feel really weird and really excited, but I'm going to have to use your rib, dog. He pulls his rib out, uses that stem cell. He clones a female out of Adam and was like, boom, she's going to look kind of like you, but she's going to have some weird shit hanging off her chest. She's not going to have anything dangling between her legs, and she's going to make you super, super excited, but don't let her eat that apple because it's poison, right? I don't know. And I'm not a huge believer in that stuff. But at the end of the day, when I interpret stuff like that, it's like it's very possible that there's something or someone.
So you think we could just be like some
petri dish?
Yeah,
I think we're a
biological simulation.
We might be an oxygen bubble in a glass of water somewhere, because if space is possibly 90% liquid, then that would only make sense.
But what if none of us actually exist? What if only you exist and I am a figment of your imagination?
Like in
this
the
universe and the
Matrix.
whole world is a figment of your imagination.
I believe that could be true.
I think it could be true too.
Like we are in a matrix, essentially, maybe connected through a neuro connection, right? Don't they call that neuroconnectivity? Yeah. So, it's very possible we are in a simulation, and we believe that we have free will, but it's been pre-programmed into us to think that we have the free will, but at the end of the day, it has been pre-selected for us on whatever decision it is, and it's been coded into us to make us feel like that's the right decision,
right?
And that we were able to make that decision, but in reality, we didn't have the option to make the opposite decision.
Right. Hardwired program.
Yeah.
Parameters. We hit the end of that algorithm, and then, yeah.
And then we start over.
Exactly. But what if also, like, you're just like a biological being, in energy in the universe, whatever, and like anything you think of becomes a new reality.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you just talked about became a new reality, and people are living that reality. Maybe you're living that reality. Maybe a copy of you is in that reality.
Are you talking about like dimensional manipulation?
Yeah, I'm saying that we as individuals, as we think of things, could create layers of reality that don't exist within our own dimension.
Whoa.
To the infinite number.
Whoa.
So if you have a dream where you're driving a Lamborghini, then boom, that's a multi-dimensional new reality where you're
actually breaching that reality, and you're living in that for just a split second.
That becomes you.
Whoa.
And so anything that person thinks of becomes a new reality too.
I've actually heard something like that. Somebody was talking to me about how dreams are one of many things. It could be you reliving one of your past lives. It could be you living a future life, or or you could be living an alternative life. But somehow your brain, because they don't know why we sleep. There's no reason why we sleep.
No.
Why do we sleep? There's no reason. They have literally no. It's like why do we yawn? A lot of theories. Communication. Hey, I look at you. I'm yawning. Hey, you yawn to recognize that I'm fucking yawning at you. I get that. It's reciprocal. Like it's reflective listening at that point at a very primal stage. I get that, but when I heard that theory, I was like, that totally makes sense. Because they say that when you dream, you can't dream of anything that you've never seen before, that you don't recognize, because your brain isn't going to create something that it's never seen. It just can't create something. It doesn't work that way, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it does. But what it can do is, I would assume, mesh certain memories into each other. So like, it could probably take like buildings from nowadays, and then if you watch a movie from the future, it could mesh certain weird shit in there. Yeah. But I also do believe that, like, sometimes when I'm dreaming, I'm like, I wake up, I'm like, dude, that was way too real. And that makes sense. Like, maybe I am jumping into another dimension at that time. Whoa. Are there books? Do you read about this, or is this just like a thought that came to your head? Because that just blew my mind.
No, I think of crap like this. I don't read anything like this. Sometimes, like, I have an extensive YouTube video playlist, but like, none of it's really conspiratorial. It's all science, it's all physics, it's all like natural sciences. And then I think about crap like this because probably like you, like, I'm very spiritual, but I'm not religious. Like, I got away from my religion way back in my youth, so now these days, like, I'm very spiritual, and I feel like we're more than we are. We're tethered to something, and maybe this existence is like we just drop into a game. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we have to learn something. Like, this is like...
It's trial.
It is a trial, but it's a specific trial that our being put us into.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Alex Jones?
Oh, my God, no.
He's fucking crazy. But his conspiracy theories, some of the shit he talks about makes a lot of sense. And the only reason I say that is because he talks a lot about multi-dimensions and their influence on us. And he says the problem is, and a lot of his theories parallel and align with Elon Musk. Alex Jones uses more biblical metaphors and more spiritual and multidimensional metaphors, where Elon Musk uses more technical, like a technology influenced type
that's
of...
because Elon Musk is an educated
tacky
and very intelligent person, and Alex Jones is an educated and very intelligent person, but he's also a master manipulator.
He is. But some of the stuff he talks about, when you think about it, and then obviously you look at other people who have the same ideas and beliefs that just have a slightly different angle. Anyways, Alex Jones was talking about, he was interviewed a while ago. I know he had a recent interview with Joe Rogan, and I didn't listen to that, but somebody had called me and told me that they need to do a show about it, just because I do a conspiracy theory show. And the most recent one he was talking about was how the Nazis had received interdimensional technology, and that's like why I kind of got off on that whole like Nazi thing earlier. But I know tons about Nazi stuffs and like the Hollow Earth and interdimension. And the Bell, all kinds of stuff. But I guess what he was saying is, we have, in our dimension, we are within a dimension that has the choice between right and wrong. And where you see demons and angels are when these creatures, these beings, come from an alternate dimension, and they do not have the option to choose right from wrong. They are on a stationary path that is chosen for them. And they are able, and the very few that are able to actually transgress or whatever it is to allow them to enter our dimension, like that is when we have battle between good and evil, because those are the two demons and angels that are allowed to come in. But what entices them is the fact that they can get into our bodies, and they actually receive the ability to make right from wrong or decide right from wrong. And typically they only know right and wrong, right? So you get your people who are exorcised, the people who are like full of demons who are just in that state, and then you have others who just are all for good, blah blah blah. And it's possession nonetheless, right? I'm not saying whether or not it's right or wrong, but he talks about how ultimately, we'll get to a point where these higher beings from higher dimensions will come down, and they have their own influence, but we can only call them down. We can only ask for them to come down and help us and save us. Hence, like God, like anything that's above us that can influence the direct impact from these multi-dimensions. And it's crazy because he also talks about how their whole goal is to control us, and we don't know that we're being controlled. And the way that parallels with the whole Elon Musk theory is that
sounds so
you're
arrogant
plugged
to
into
me.
Yeah, it's weird. You
That
should
is
listen
not weird.
to it.
It's arrogant. It's like
weird.
we're humans, and now we have the power to know what interdimensional beings are doing. It's just like humans being like, "Oh, I know what God said." Like, it's
right?
very arrogant. It's so arrogant to me. Like, I have no doubt that this plane, whatever we're on, whatever this life is definitely like
Influenced.
it's a challenge. I almost feel like it's like an Xbox game, right? Like it's a disc that's hard loaded. It doesn't change on the disc, but the gameplay changes as we go through it. I honestly believe that we come from a being. We call it God, but it is actually just ourselves. It's ourselves on a different plane, and it's like we're an avatar in this, and like it's either a challenge for fun, it's either a lesson for growth, or maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a way to pass time.
Maybe
in universal energies. So who knows? And so I think we can drop into this plane at any point in time. I think their energy can be like 1977. There you go.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that you can definitely connect with the Akashic record. Is that what they call it?
I'm not sure.
So when you're meditating, they say that monks, it's like when you hit a certain level of deep meditation, you're able to access the Akashic or the Akashic record. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I think it's the Akashic record. But what it is energy's never lost. Everything we talk about, everything we say, our being in itself is never lost. There's an imprint, like an eternal imprint, to where once you are able to reach that Akashic record, you can travel back in time, you can go forward in time, and you're able to access certain types of knowledge. A lot of like monks and a lot of people who have been able to deep dive into that type of meditation, they will say that they were influenced by some outer source that told them the information, or they were able to access it, through that meditation. And that makes sense because, you look at Nikola Tesla, it was the same thing. Like, a lot of these people who are super smart, they believe that they were contacted and told these certain things. They go through meditation, they figure it out, and that's what they do. And that's just something that a lot of monks and a lot of people they call it, basically it's an energy record for all time. So nothing is ever lost. You're able to access something. So next time you're in your it's deprivation, your sensory deprivation tank.
Yes.
You should just deep dive. Take like an edible and just completely go unconscious. Subconscious, I should say.
Maybe someday, sensory deprivation is interesting because, it's just you and your mind.
Yeah.
And so, I literally feel my mind kind of splitting in half, and it's almost this struggle between my conscious mind and my subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we can access things
Totally.
that we can explain, and it takes those states of meditation where you just go blank.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part about sensory deprivation, is it's this tug of war, and then all of a sudden it's nothing. There's nothing there, but I come out with like information that I feel like I couldn't have come up with on my own.
Yeah.
So,
Have you seen the TV show on Netflix? It's that girl, Stranger Things.
no, because I don't have Netflix.
Okay. So there's a show called Netflix, and this girl is able to access this alternate dimension through a sleep deprivation tank. And in the end of episode 1, I'm going to ruin it for everybody watching this. But on the end of episode 1, they don't explain it, but when they put her in a bath, not a bath, like a cheap little blow-up swimming pool full of salt and water, which is sleep deprivation. I mean, sleep deprivation. It's sensory deprivation. But they put her in a sensory deprivation tank, essentially, where she's sitting there floating, and she's able to access it at the very end of season 1. So most people don't know what that is, but she's at that point, she's accessing the other dimension because she's able to do so with depriving herself of all the other senses.
So you don't need Netflix for that. You can just do
don't.
it in town and go do a sensory deprivation tank, because I think everybody has that experience.
They should.
And the people who go back and back and back and back are seeking that experience of connecting to a different plane.
Totally.
Because it takes you out of this world. It's the closest thing to zero gravity. It's the closest thing to not being attached to earthly bonds that you'll ever get on this planet.
That's exactly right.
And so even with psychedelics, like you'll never get that level of disconnection. Adjusting me.
Yeah, just that thing's starting to fall for some reason.
Sounds a little better.
But no, that's cool. I'm glad that you're doing that. I've thought about doing it. In fact, I've thought about looking into the cost of those tanks. I don't know how much they are, but I don't think they're too expensive. Maybe a couple $1,000.
No, like a decent tank is like 25 grand. Like the ones I lay in is like a 25 grand tank.
How so? Why so?
Because it's awesome. Because it's number one, like for sensory deprivation, like it needs to have filtered the water really well.
Gotcha.
Like there's certain amenities in there that are nice, like the tanks that I use at Stillwater Float Center in Boise. I'll plug them because they're freaking awesome. I love them. It's 10 inches of water at body temperature with 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. And so the tank is huge. Like I can lay like this. And like I'm tall, but I don't touch either end either.
What's the cost? Yeah, you are tall. You're what, 6 foot?
5'11".
5'11"? Yeah, I know you're tall. Well, you're probably wearing heels. I just remember we walked in, I'm wearing like flat workout shoes.
Right.
And I'm like, you feel like you're almost as tall as me. And I'm 6'2", so. But yeah, I could probably try that out. How much is it? How much is it per session?
So your first float there is 45. And then
bad.
floats are 65, but like I do a membership. And so it's about $50 a float for me.
That's not bad.
And I could do it every day if I had the money and time and inclination. Like I would float every day.
I believe it.
So
yeah, I know a few people who go down and they float, and they really enjoy it. Athletes, a lot of them will go down there and do like a bunch of like self-reflection. They get lost in thought.
well,
So
yeah. I think it accesses a part of your brain that like I was telling you earlier that wasn't on the podcast was an unexpected consequence of this is I really like don't have a desire to drink. And just for context, like I love wine, and so not a week has gone by over the course of the last 22 decades that I haven't opened a bottle of wine almost every week, if not a couple times a week or whatever. And so for a month, like I've had no desire to drink at all.
crazy.
And I think it's like my body or my brain has discovered that I can have this disconnection and I don't need to control everything.
Damn.
So it's been deep, and it hasn't been like, oh, I'm gonna go learn something, or I'm gonna go do something or fix myself. It's just like whatever the float brings me is whatever the float brings me, and I never think about the things that I end up feeling later. It's really weird because I'm thinking about like completely different stuff,
Yeah.
but somehow it just unlocks like whatever I need to unlock.
Yeah.
So
That's so cool. You're totally selling me on it. That's awesome. All right, so we need to talk about film because I want to talk to you about film because you worked on some cool projects. I worked on some fun projects with you, and that's how I know you. And I remember the first time I met you was when it was the first. I wasn't the casting call, but it was the first cast meeting for Anthony's and Parallel Worlds. What was it?
yeah, it was
Cycle.
Yeah.
Which was dope. And I was kind of bummed that didn't get picked up because that trailer was sick.
The trailer was awesome. I think the story is awesome, but it's going to take a lot to sell.
Super competitive.
Well, we've tried. Anthony put a good college effort into it, and then I took it to LA and gave it to an agent that I know who's been trying to sell it. But it's a tough sell right now because things are changing so quickly in the demand content market. So
Yeah.
so shows have to appeal widely, and it has to
appeal now.
It has to appeal now, and it has to have like what's really weird about it has to appeal now, but it also has to have like based on some type of track record of another show. So and Cycle's a little bit different. Like it's different enough from the shows that we could use as like a baseline, like Dexter.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see it go. I would, but I don't know if it's the right show at the right time.
That's and that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's just Dexter and those types of shows they had their fun, they had their wave. Now it's like Game of Thrones fantasy stuff. Those are the things that are kicking. Zombies are kind of fading off, I think.
Yeah, I think zombies are about dead.
Yeah, I think like The Walking Dead is slowly just losing its. I haven't watched the last 2 or 3 seasons of Walking Dead. I watched up to season 7. I was really into it, but I just think like zombies and a couple other types of things are slowly going by the wayside. Like people are still interested, but there's not that peak interest.
Well, I'd like to think that people have arrived through all these seasons of Walking Dead at the same thing I arrived at in season 1. So like the last thing I saw in The Walking Dead was the rail car. Right. And so like for me, I was like, well, that show was kind of cool, but like literally it's the same thing over and over again. It's like rinse and repeat of the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything's great. We're feeling relaxed. Somebody does something stupid. Zombies come, battle zombies, get back to a state of relaxed. And it was like that every episode for me. So it got really boring really fast.
One bad guy every season.
Exactly. Just like one horrible person that you can't wait to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. So I get that. And consumer tastes constantly change. There's always something that's going to come out and change the people's view. But think about vampires, like what, 10 years ago or whatever.
I know.
Like,
yes.
Oh my god, right? Vampire Diary, everything came out. Vampires. Well, then zombies came out, and vampires kind of fell by the wayside. Zombie, and now it's all Game of Thrones and like all fantasy kind of stuff and futuristic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then give it another 3 years, it might be country like Western stuff again.
Right? Who knows? Like, there's no pattern to it. I bet
There
there's a
isn't.
pattern, but like we don't know what it is because it's not obvious. How can you go from zombies to like
Sci-fi? That's so weird.
Sci-fi and then like historical stuff, like Game of Thrones, like like that took place like and I haven't even seen it because I have no interest in it. I have no interest in watching anything.
It's a beautiful show.
That's what everybody
says. It's a great
says.
show. It really is good. I got into it with my ex-girlfriend. Her and I really got into that show for the first like 5 or 6 seasons. I think this is the 8th season. I got into it for like the first 6 seasons. Ever since her and I split, I haven't really gotten into it just because I didn't have somebody to watch it with. But
right.
But when I did watch it, I really enjoyed it. So, but you also worked on a lot of projects. You've been camera. What have you done? You've done literally everything. Producer.
Well, only in this place. In the real LA world, big LA, I've worked with the camera department for a while. It's always been my passion, and my grandfather was a photographer. I grew up with a camera in my hand, so it was only natural for me to gravitate towards cameras. And so about for the last 10 years, I've been in various roles in the camera department. I'm finally getting to the point now where I'm moving up, like I'm marketing myself as a director of photography, and it's a slow going thing to get consistent work, but I am building a reputation and a reel that's starting to speak for itself. So
yeah. Well, you're great at what you do. I have some friends who work as grips, and they're working on trying to get their hours in, and they're down in LA working on really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I do follow them. Rashad, giving you a shout out, dog. Rashad's my boy. One of my best friends, and he went through all this rigmarole to try to get certified and whatnot, and he's getting his hours in. And I remember he would give me calls, we'd talk on the phone 20-30 minutes at a time. He'd be like, oh man, it's tough getting work down here, dude. I'm trying to get my hours, but now like it's slowly starting to pick up. And you can definitely tell somebody who is passionate and somebody who desires to make something of themselves and who really enjoys not only having a job but doing what they do, right? And I see that in what he does. He's very passionate, and obviously I've worked on projects with you, and I see obviously a reflection of that as well. So but you've been on some cool projects. You did I know you've done the Breaking Bad stuff.
Yeah.
You did a bunch of scene shots, and what all did you do? I've talked to you over the years about stuff, but yeah.
Well, with Breaking Bad, I owned a production company in Albuquerque, because Albuquerque Studios was booming, and it was a good opportunity for me to get into the industry through providing services, right? And so one of my services was like custom stock footage, and so producers like for Breaking Bad would hire me to shoot very specific scenes that they did not want to shoot.
Yeah.
And so like I could get away with things in Albuquerque that they couldn't. Like if they wanted to shoot a quick insert, it was crew, all the union, all of everything else,
licensing,
plus film permits and Albuquerque police. Like they are as bad as LAPD. If they see a tripod, like they're stopping to write a ticket. So we could shoot something very quickly and on the fly to their specification and then put it into the show. So like a lot of the film that you see in the show, but it's like little tiny pieces, like a second here, 2 seconds there. And so, over the
establishing shots.
Well, not even establishing shots. Like if we were shooting you, like if we had a camera on you and then you reach down to take a drink, like 12 days later, somebody would come through and like stage us all, and like we'd shoot the glass just sitting there, and then we'd shoot a hand grabbing it and stuff like that. So
okay.
So, and it was just like all kinds of stuff, outdoor shots. We did a couple of the time lapses.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's way cool.
Yeah.
So then you sold that out?
I sold that out. So I had a contract.
Gotcha.
And so
got out of there, decided to move to Boise.
Yeah.
Why? Boise's a beautiful place. There's no why. I guess the only why is why did it take so long to move to Boise?
Right. So I came to Boise in 2015, which is about that was about 2 years after my existential crisis started. Mm-hmm. So 2012 was like a complete change in my life. I was so tired of where I was and where I was going, and I was in the middle of like losing a very long-term relationship. I was in the middle of a divorce, and it was tough. It was really tough on me. So my best friend that I've known forever since we were 18, she moved up here on a whim, and because she's adventurous like that. And so she saw that I was really like struggling to get my shit together, and she's like, come on up and visit. And so I came up, and I was like, I had expectations of just being like this dinky little town in the middle of nowhere, and I was really impressed.
Farmville,
right?
USA.
Well, actually, like Billings, Montana was kind of like the picture of what I thought this would be. So maybe you had a target, maybe you didn't. Right. And so I came up here, I was super impressed. I was like, wow, I love this place. And she's like, why don't you come up here and kick it with me and stay with me? And so I went back, got rid of all my crap, and came back up.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of fun. At least I've had a lot of fun working on projects and hanging out, little friend get-togethers.
It's been interesting. Like, my life here is much different than it was in New Mexico, because my life in New Mexico is very, like, post Air Force.
Yeah.
Like everything that I had lived in New Mexico was things I had established while I was still in the military. So coming up here, like, it really allowed me to explore my identity a little bit more than just being, you know, the GI or the veteran or whatever.
Yeah. You're able to kind of just like break loose and you start fresh.
Exactly. So, like, you know, working on film projects and meeting all the awesome people I have and this huge artistic community here that I never thought I would see. Like, it's just given me an opportunity to flourish in different ways.
Totally.
So I'm so grateful for that. I love Boise. I'll always love Boise for that reason.
It's a good melting pot. And for the most part, a lot of the people that I've met and I'm good friends with, they are from Boise. They're definitely natives, but there's a handful of people who have influenced me that are not from Boise. And I went to school and you know, did sports out on the East Coast. So I attribute a lot of my development, you know, emotional development and a lot of different things to my experience out there as far as cultural development and understanding. They're very different, you know. And so, you know, moving back here from the East Coast, I guess, I had a better understanding of the people who are here and the values that they do instill in me, because there are things that I believe that outside of Boise I don't get when it comes to certain types of things, like support. I don't have certain friends that can, like, they don't fulfill me in certain capacities only because, you know, they don't have the same understanding or background.
Right.
You know, they interpret things differently. And it's hard to relate with somebody who grows up in, like, Compton. You know, like a guy I played football with, you know, he's like, you know, went to Compton High and Compton College and, you know, played football with him, great friend, whatnot, but it's not like I can go to my buddy, you know, guy that I rented out a room to in college. It's not like I can hit him up and be like, hey, man, what do you think this is, like, how do you think I should, like, handle this situation? He has no idea, you know, completely different situation. And it depends.
Interesting, because, you know, I grew up in Colorado and I left, like, as quickly as I could. I got out of Colorado, which was kind of the appeal of the military, because I knew that would get me as far away from Colorado as I could possibly get. That's a story for a different day, but, like, for me, Colorado represents abject failure. The day I go back there is the day that I have completely given up on life.
Wow.
And so, like, I say completely opposite of you. Like, I feel like everybody who lives there couldn't possibly understand, you know, me or my mindset or anything. And, like, I meet a lot more wanderers and gypsies out here on the road, so to speak. So, you know, and those are definitely my people. So I definitely gravitate towards people who have an adventurous spirit. And so I connect better with them than I ever would with, like, old high school friends or whatever.
Makes sense.
So.
Well, you're very free-spirited. I'm also very free-spirited, but I'm very grounded as well. And I am comfortable in my I guess in my grounding. I'm comfortable with, you know, my foundation, with the people that I grew up with, but it's for me, I don't rely on them whatsoever outside of maybe some type of backboard. You know, like, hey, man, I have an idea. Let me shoot this off you. Let me get your idea, like, your opinion about it. Maybe if you have a couple other ideas. But for the most part, I don't think a lot of people around me also understand the way that I think. But
what's your sign, Tim?
I'm a Sag.
Are you? Okay, so that explains you being so grounded.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. Which is why I'm very, again, free-spirited as well.
Right. So I'm an Aquarian, which is totally free-spirited, but I'm an air sign, so, like, I'm not grounded. I really am not. So I have to surround myself with people who ground me in various ways.
Yes.
You know, our mutual friend Anthony, he's like my lightning rod sometimes. Like, he just sucks the air out of me and just makes me fall back to earth in, like, the most violent fashion possible. But he's the only person in my life that's capable of doing that, like, plucking me out of the sky and just throwing me down. And
Yeah.
like, okay, I needed that.
Yeah. He just calls you out on shit or what?
Oh, all the time. Like, he
Yeah.
calls me out big time, and that's why I love him. Like, he does that. Like, he recognizes various patterns in my world,
Sure.
Facebook posts, or just I get too quiet, and he's like, no.
He is like that. I think he's with that with a lot of people.
Right.
But he's also somebody who's very in tune. And he is very emotionally intelligent.
Yes, he is. He's a
Very.
lot more emotionally intelligent than
Yeah.
I am. I'm very oblivious to emotions, even though I'm definitely like an empath, so I can feel emotions, but like
Suppression.
Maybe it's
almost?
ambivalence. Maybe that's what I should be calling it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care how people feel.
Yeah.
And Anthony does, and that's like the big part of his heart. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. He's got a big heart. And sometimes I'm like, Anthony, quit being so fucking loving right now, dude. I don't want somebody to be so loving right now. Let me sulk.
right?
It's like
You gotta find another friend to get sympathy from, though. Like, if I want to feel sorry for myself, I don't call him.
Yeah, exactly.
I call the person who's like, "You're right," and it's everybody else's fault. I'm like, "No, it is." And then when I'm tired of hearing that, then I call Anthony. He's like, "Yeah, it's your fault." I'm like, "Yeah,
That's so funny. That is so Anthony, though.
yes."
But that's why we love that guy. Well, shoot. I kind of want to take an intermission. If not, maybe we could wrap it up. We've been over an hour, by the way.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so this is like a time warp, and everybody comes in here, and it's like we go through time. I do want to grab a drink, though.
Yes, I want to
And
take an intermission. 'Cause I
do
gotta
need to
pee
take an
bad.
intermission.
So.
Me too. Yes, likewise. Everybody listening, we will probably be back, and if we're not, then we'll catch you on the next episode. But all right. Well, we'll check you in 2 seconds.
I'm not even watching myself. I
dude,
can't watch myself.
All right, intermission now.